You are tuned in to another edition of Americana Music Profiles, brought to you by Americana Rhythm Music Magazine and AmericanaMusicMagazine.com. I'm your host, Greg Tutwiler. Let's jump right in to the next exciting interview. Peter Fand is a multi-instrumentalist, composer, educator, and 7-year Cirque du Soleil veteran. In 2016, he joined with fellow performers to create a band called 10 Toy Cars. The group's second album, Hello Pariah, is set to release on May 15th. Peter is my guest on this edition of Americana Music Profiles as we talk about his band, their music, and his career in Vegas entertainment. Hi, Peter. Welcome to the podcast today.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's good to get a chance to talk to you and learn more about what you guys do. Tell me, obviously we're going to talk about a new record that you've got coming out here pretty soon, but your career goes beyond just being a musician. You've got all kinds of things that you've got your hands in, performance stage, all these kinds. Tell me a little bit about that and what got you into the business in the first place.
Sure. Well, as you know, I'm based in Las Vegas, and I came out here in 2012 as part of a Cirque du Soleil show called Zarkana, which at the time was an international touring show. And I was in that show as a multi-instrumentalist, primarily a bass player, but I also played kora, which is a 21-string West African harp, and traditional percussion, global percussion, and mandolin, and a few other things. Mm-hmm. And that show moved to Vegas, and when it did, I didn't actually know that much about the town, although I had been out here for gigs and things over the years. Yeah. But I came out here and kind of fell in love with it. So when that Cirque show closed, I stayed, although I did actually go out for another year with another Cirque show called Kuza. But when I came back here, I've been working as a composer and performer in a bunch of other big production shows on the Strip. I was doing a show called Baz, and I currently do Zombie Burlesque and Vegas the Show at Planet Hollywood, and I'm kind of in that sort of big production show world here. But I'm also doing a lot of composition. I'm writing for some film scores and various stage production music and things like that as it comes up.
What got you into music prior to Vegas 2012 as a younger person? How did that get started for you?
Well, I've kind of been playing music all my life. My dad played a bit of guitar around the house when I was a kid, and when I was about 4 years old, he got a new guitar for himself and gave me his old one. Okay. And taught me a few chords, and then I kind of knocked around on a bunch of instruments over the years through elementary school, playing like trumpet and euphonium, and then when I got to high school level, started playing bass, which kind of, I don't know, everything started to coalesce around my music world at that time, and it led me in a bunch of different directions. And soon I was studying a lot of international music, which led me to actually go to West Africa and kind of go back and forth between West Africa and here. I went really deep into the West African traditional world for a long while, playing the kora and percussion over there, and studying and then touring with those guys and playing in a bunch of ensembles that were really traditional West African music. And that stuff, even though I did study music in college, I kind of look at that moment in my life when I started studying the African stuff and going over there as being like the beginning of my real music education in a way.
When did it become, was there a moment that you recall, this music is what I'm going to do, this is going to be my career? I presume that it's pretty much what you're doing full time now in some degree.
Sure. Well, I've actually been really fortunate in that I've never really done anything else. Right. Like I came out of high school with a very linear focus on playing music, and went to school to study music. And when I came out of that I was already gigging and touring and stuff as a bass player and playing in different groups, which was that was kind of like the first window into what the rest of my life would be like.
Okay.
And I did end up, I guess, teaching a lot of music, which is not performance, but it was still in the music world.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then I ended up building a recording studio in New York, which went through a bunch of different mutations over the years and moving locations and things and growing. And that studio was kind of the center of my artistic world for a long while. And so, yeah, I mean, I've just kind of continued to do this, and then eventually that led me to auditioning for some bigger shows. I did Lion King on Broadway for a while, and then did join Cirque du Soleil for about 7 years, and it's just kind of been a straight line kind of, well, not exactly straight, lots of turns and twists, bizarre directions, but definitely a linear kind of life of music.
So part of I guess the main reason why we're having a conversation today is your band 10 Toy Cars. When did that come about? How did that come out of your career? Sure.
Well, that group really, 10 Toy Cars emerged in 2016, and it came together when I was working in Cirque, and I was working with a couple of musicians that I regard as some of my just favorite people to play with, a violinist named Martin St. Pierre and the drummer Aaron Guidry, who are both cast members of another Cirque show called Mystère.
Mm-hmm.
And we were working together, just kind of putting ideas together for a group, because we just loved playing together. And 10 Toy Cars was kind of born there as I wrote a bunch of music and arranged it for the ensemble, and we started to perform in and around the Vegas area. And we became kind of like a mainstay of the downtown music scene here.
Okay.
And we released our first record in 2016, which was very widely received as in this sort of indie Americana world. Got a lot of airplay around the country and a lot of support from press and so forth. We put out a video that accompanied that for a song called "Do Everything You Can Before You're Dead."
Yep.
And that was kind of the beginning of this journey. And we were about to start touring that album when I got contracted to do another Cirque tour, which took me away for about a year.
Yeah.
So when I came back from that tour, I sat down to start composing this new album, which is called Hello Pariah, and that one is due out on the 15th of May. So that's pretty exciting for us.
How did you settle into the Americana theme? I listened to a couple of songs of the previous album, and in particular that video, and it's I can see what I perceive the Cirque du Soleil influences, at least in the video, but
sure,
the music does have an Americana bluegrass roots, kind of a country alternative feel. How did that show up for you? Was that intentional, or did it just kind of happen out of what you guys were doing?
Well, there's a lot of things in that. First, you mentioned the Cirque du Soleil Cirque kind of feeling in the video, and that's definitely there. Obviously, like that video has a bunch of acrobats, and we had skydivers. We had like seven airplanes of jumpers, like in the production of that video. But the music, it definitely is that Americana Roots backbone kind of thing. That's largely because in this group, I front the band as a singing mandolin player, and the instrumentation from the very beginning was intended to be set around that idea. So it was kind of like the traditional bluegrass ensemble minus banjo. So acoustic guitar, fiddle, mandolin, And then we added a drum set to that,
Mm-hmm.
which makes it immediately more of a kind of alternative Americana kind of thing.
Right.
And then compositionally, it's a little bit. It's not bluegrass. It's not blues or roots music really. In that it's very through composed compositional stuff. Like I come from a background of I spent a lot of time listening to classical music, Bach, and then also lots of jazz and funk and rock and everything else. So it all kind of comes together into this soup of what Tin Toy Cars has become. But it's always it's been intended to maintain that traditional Americana foundation. And like I say, that's largely highlighted by the fact that I fronted as a singing mandolin player.
Yeah.
So it's mandolin and octave mandolin are really featured very prominently there.
Where do you find it fits most with what kind of audience?
Well, I think it's really that Americana audience, I think. Although in a way, it's kind of like it's really a AAA radio kind of band, because it is a little bit for more adult audiences, not in the way that Vegas means when they say adult audiences.
Yeah.
but yeah, it's a very evolved compositional music with a very poetic lyrical slant to it, and it asks an audience to be like a real listener and appreciator of music, I think. Although some of it is very catchy and has good melodic hooks and things that anyone should be able to grab onto.
Yeah.
But I would say the AAA audience is the audience for this music. People who grew up listening to a whole variety of music might find a home there.
Okay. Where did the name come from?
Tin Toy Cars is the name came from this experience of walking through the desert here in Vegas, where we live. Vegas is a curious place because it's a balance of the brash debauchery of the Las Vegas Strip, which is what it's so famously known for. But then on the other side, it's this wonderland of desert nature. We're surrounded by this landscape of desert mountains, and there are trails through those mountains that disappear into the desert. And if you hike on those trails or explore them, eventually you may come upon these old cars that are buried in the desert. And when you happen upon them, it's this thing where it's this reminder that there were people there before, and there's a lot of mystery in it, it really it feels like there's a whole other life there, and so it's really interesting because there are those old metal cars half buried in the desert that all have a story to tell. Some of them filled with bullet holes and other oddities.
Yeah. Wow.
So it came from that, and in a way, it's kind of a play on this balance that defines both Las Vegas and what we think of as the basis of the band.
Yeah, I love that story. I've never heard that, and I would have never thought that was where you would go with that name. So that's cool.
Yep, that's where it comes from.
That. You mentioned earlier about getting the first album out and the video and some traction, and then kind of having to put it aside for a bit because you went out on another tour with Cirque. How do you balance all of this with the other things that you do? Do you have a plan going forward with this new album and how you plan to support it?
Well, that's a really good question, particularly at this this very odd moment, I should say, because as you know, we're in the middle of this quarantine, this COVID, this new world provided by COVID-19.
Right.
So we're, in a way, what this has done for us, this unexpectedly gave us the momentum to sit down and mix this album, which was sitting there largely complete and waiting to be released.
Okay.
And with all the shows closing and all the other things taking a brief pause, we completed the mixing and mastering of this album, and now we're finally getting it out. The exciting thing about that, when we return to a new normal, whatever that's going to look like, we're going to be very well positioned to be able to come out strong, come out of the gate, and get out there and do some of the things that we hadn't been able to do with the last record. Primarily get out there and support it and tour, and we'll hopefully be out doing some festivals and things. We'll see how it all evolves. It's a little bit hard to know at this moment because we don't even know if the festivals will be happening. I know a lot of them are canceled already. And so, but we intend to support it as much as we can, both in the traditional way of going out and touring and supporting, and then in whatever new way might emerge from this quarantine era that we live in.
Right. Yeah. Is there anything? What's the ultimate achievement for you that you haven't achieved yet? What do you have your sights set on? Do you have something?
Well, that's a very interesting question. Do you mean particularly as a band or myself as an artist, or?
Either way, as a musician, and it may be in your band, it may be with Cirque, it may be something else that's on the horizons that you just haven't reached yet.
Well, I'd love to just continue on this trajectory. Like I had said earlier, that I feel fortunate to have gotten to this moment in my life, having spent my entire life focused on a life in music. I've had the opportunity to perform in some of the great venues in the world, Carnegie Hall and Radio City Music Hall and the Apollo Theater and all these places that as a kid I used to go see bands performing in. And I'd like to see to see Tin Toy Cars be able to get to a point where we could be playing in some really beautiful and prestigious rooms like that, and also just to continue on this path, this life where hopefully growing old playing music and continuing to have successes, and really it's about living an inspired and well directed life of music, you know.
Yeah, that's cool.
I guess that's really it.
Yeah.
There's no bigger vision, I guess.
Yeah. Cool. So the album again is Hello Pariah. Where does that come from, the name?
So Hello Pariah is the title track of the album, and that song tells about someone who keeps running into his own personal demons wherever he goes. Like he thought it was gone, but there it is again.
Okay.
Pariah in this song is kind of a metaphor for the dark side of ourselves,
right? Okay.
that keeps rearing its head and trying to knock us off course. So the album is I look at it as kind of a collection of 10 little musical vignettes. They each tell little stories, and they're all musically composed in a way that try to deliver those little stories. Like there's a song on the album called Guernsey Witches, which is based on a tradition in the Guernsey Island, which is one of these little islands in the English Channel between England and France. And there they build in their architecture little stone seats on the roofs of their homes for witches to rest on, because they, like in the old lore, they would believe that without them, witches would have nowhere to rest, so they would enter their homes and they would never leave.
Oh, okay.
And this song is kind of based on that old lore, and it's kind of takes the listener on a cool little journey through this ancient idea. But yeah, so they're all kind of like that. All of the songs have their own contour and tell some story that in a way makes it kind of like a little musical storybook or something.
Where does the where does the ideas, the substance for the things that you write? I mean, that's I presume not something that you've experienced directly. The content of that song. How do these things come to you?
So that's a good question. Every single thing is different. Every one is different, and the form of composition is different. But
Right.
like, for example, that one that I was just talking about, I was on tour, and I was in Australia, and in the city, I believe it was in Brisbane. There was a sort of an exhibit set up of an old settler's village, and something in that. There was a witch's seat on the architecture of this building that was there, and I heard about it and started to wonder about it, and went back to my hotel and researched it and sat there obsessing over it for a few weeks until this song just kind of sprang to life out of the experience.
Yeah, that's cool. So the record is out May 15th, and I presume will be available in all of the outlets. What's the best way for people to get to you? Questions, maybe buy the record or the one previous?
Well, yeah, so the album will be available everywhere on all the streaming services, digital outlets, Apple Music, iTunes, Spotify, Bandcamp, SoundCloud, whatever you use. So any way that you like to listen to music, I'm sure you'll be able to find it. And really, the best thing to do is come to tintoycars.net and check us out, and send us a message and let us know what you're thinking, and check out our last album too. And we are not offended when people listen for free on Spotify and all those things, because we love those services as well. So
awesome.
Check it out and listen, and let us know what you think, and shoot us questions and ideas and thoughts. And
cool. Well, thanks, Peter. This has been really interesting. I learned some things, and it's good stuff, and I certainly wish you well with this.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it, and it's great talking to you.
Thanks again for tuning in to this episode of Americana Music Profiles. Find us on iTunes at Americana Music Profiles, and on the internet at AmericanaRhythm.com.